The Krenim colony ship Starweaver shudders violently as it plummets through the atmosphere of Delta 9, an unexplored planet never meant to be their destination. Chief Engineer Willa grips a console, her four-fingered hands turning pale as alarms blare throughout the ship. The vessel's hull groans under the stress of uncontrolled entry, and Willa knows their chances of survival are slim. With a deafening crash, the Starweaver slams into the alien landscape. The impact throws Willa to the floor, and she tastes blood in her mouth. As the dust settles, she pushes herself up, her antennae twitching with the lingering vibrations of the crash. The ship's systems flicker and die around her, leaving only emergency lighting to illuminate the destruction. Willa makes her way through the twisted corridors, assessing the damage. The ship's all-female crew scrambles to contain fires and tend to the injured. As she reaches the cargo hold, Willa notices something out of place, an intact stasis pod, its surface unmarred by the crash. Curiosity overrides caution as Willa approaches the pod. Through its frosted surface, she glimpses a form unlike any she's seen before. An unknown alien species, she mutters, reaching for the control panel. As her fingers brush the surface, the pod suddenly hisses and malfunctions, trapping her hand inside. Panic sets in as Willa tugs at her trapped limb. The pod's occupant stirs, eyes fluttering open to reveal a startling shade of brown, a color no Krenim possesses. The being inside is Jason Williams, a human male, though Willa has no way of knowing this. Jason's vision clears, and he finds himself face to face with a blue-skinned, antenna-sporting alien. Instinct kicks in, and he reaches for the emergency release. With a pneumatic hiss, the pod opens fully, freeing Willa's hand, but sending her stumbling backward. Jason catches her reflexively, his warm hand steadying her shoulders. The moment their skin touches, Willa gasps. An electric current seems to race through her body, igniting nerve endings she never knew existed. She jerks away, confused and flustered by the unfamiliar sensations. Before either can speak, heavy footsteps announce the arrival of the Krenim captain. Her stern voice cuts through the air. "Explain this immediately, Chief Engineer." Jason steps forward, his voice steady despite the surreal situation. "I'm Jason Williams, a human diplomat. I was added to your mission in secret by Krenim High Command to establish first contact between our species." The captain's eyes narrow with suspicion. "Confine him to quarters until we can verify his claims," she orders, turning on her heel. As Willa leads Jason away, whispers and giggles erupt from the gathering crowd of female Krenim crew members. Their eyes roam over Jason's alien form, fascination evident in their expressions. Willa feels her face flush with embarrassment at her crew's behavior and quickens her pace. Once alone in his assigned room, Jason sinks onto the bed, the weight of his situation settling on his shoulders. He's the sole human on a planet full of aliens who know nothing about his species. The fate of human-Krenim relations rests on his shoulders. Meanwhile, Willa retreats to her own quarters, her skin still tingling from Jason's touch. She's unaware that this strange reaction is just the beginning of a discovery that will change both their species forever. Krenim biology is uniquely compatible with humans in ways neither has yet imagined. As Delta 9's alien sun sets, casting an eerie glow through the crashed ship's windows, both Jason and Willa lie awake. Their minds race with the potential consequences of their encounter, unaware of the interstellar drama about to unfold, one that will redefine the boundaries of both their species and challenge everything they thought they knew about the universe. As Delta 9's alien sun crept above the horizon, casting long shadows across the crash site, Jason and Willa found themselves jolted from their restless nights by a flurry of activity. The ship's communication officer burst into the captain's makeshift command center, her antennae twitching with excitement. "Captain, we've intercepted an encrypted message from Krenim High Command," she announced, her voice breathless. The captain's eyes narrowed as she scanned the decrypted text. Her expression shifted from suspicion to grudging acceptance. "It seems our unexpected guest was telling the truth," she muttered, turning to face her crew. "Release the human diplomat from confinement." Moments later, Jason found himself standing before the captain, the tension in the air palpable. She fixed him with a piercing stare. "Mr. Williams, your diplomatic status has been confirmed. However, this doesn't change our dire situation. She paused, her antennae twitching thoughtfully. Chief Engineer Willa will serve as your liaison. She'll introduce you to our culture and technology while we work on repairs. Willa's heart raced as she stepped forward, acutely aware of Jason's presence. Understood, Captain. I'll begin the tour immediately. As they exited the command center, Willa led Jason through the twisted corridors of the Starweaver. Our primary challenge is repairing the ship's propulsion systems, she explained, her voice steady despite the tingling sensation that raced across her skin when Jason accidentally brushed against her in the narrow passageway. They emerged into the harsh light of Delta 9's binary suns, the alien landscape stretching out before them. Willa pointed to a massive gash in the ship's hull. We need to seal that breach before we can even think about leaving atmosphere. Jason nodded, his eyes scanning the damage. I may not be an engineer, but I'm willing to help however I can. As they worked side by side, assessing the damage and cataloging needed repairs, Willa found herself increasingly distracted. Each accidental touch sent waves of pleasure coursing through her body, unlike anything she'd ever experienced. Her face flushed a deeper shade of blue, her concentration wavering. In a moment of distraction, Willa's hands slipped while repairing a power conduit. A bright flash and a sharp crack filled the air as the conduit exploded, sending sparks flying. Willa stumbled backward, her protective suit smoldering. "Willa!" Jason shouted, rushing to her side. Without hesitation, he began helping her remove the compromised suit. "We need to get this off you before the radiation affects your skin." Willa's mind reeled, torn between the danger of the situation and the intoxicating sensation of Jason's hands on her body. As the last piece of the protective suit fell away, she stood before him in her form-fitting undergarments, her blue skin glistening with perspiration. Jason's eyes widened as he took in Willa's alien physiology. Her slender form was accentuated by subtle ridges along her spine and delicate patterns swirling across her skin. For a moment, they stood frozen, the air between them charged with an unfamiliar energy. The spell was broken by the sound of approaching footsteps. A group of female Cranium crew members, drawn by the commotion, rounded the corner. Their eyes darted between Willa's state of undress and Jason's proximity, antennae twitching with curiosity and excitement. Whispers erupted among the group, and Willa felt her face burn with embarrassment. She quickly gathered her damaged suit, avoiding eye contact with both Jason and her crewmates. As the day progressed, rumors spread through the colony like wildfire. Speculation about human Krenim compatibility dominated conversations in every corner of the crash site. Willa retreated to her quarters, overwhelmed by the intensity of her reactions to Jason and the sudden scrutiny from her peers. Meanwhile, Dr. Lyra, the ship's xenobiologist, approached Jason with awe-inspiring enthusiasm. "Mr. Williams, I have a proposition for you," she began, her eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity. "I'd like to conduct a series of medical examinations to study human physiology. This could be groundbreaking for both our species." Jason considered the request, recognizing the potential for fostering scientific cooperation. "I'd be happy to participate, Dr. Lyra. When do we start?" As Dr. Lyra began her examinations, she couldn't help but notice the unusual readings from Willa's recent medical scans. The chief engineer's hormonal levels were far from baseline, showing patterns Lyra had never encountered before. Concerned, Dr. Lyra brought her findings to the captain. "I believe we should limit contact between the human and our crew, especially Willa, until we understand these changes better," she advised. The captain frowned, weighing the potential risks against the diplomatic implications. After a moment of contemplation, she shook her head. "No, the human's presence is too important to our mission. Continue your research discreetly, Dr. Lyra, and report any significant findings immediately." As Delta 9's alien night fell once more, Willa tossed and turned in her bunk, her dreams filled with vivid images of Jason. Across the camp, Jason stared at the unfamiliar constellations visible through his window, his mind racing with thoughts of Willa and the weight of his diplomatic responsibilities. Neither of them realized that their unique biochemical compatibility was already beginning to affect the entire Krenim crew, subtly altering the colony's dynamics. As the suns rose on another day on Delta 9, The true implications of humanity's first contact with the Cranum remained hidden, waiting to unfold in ways no one could have predicted. As the first rays of Delta IX's twin suns pierced the horizon, the Cranum colony stirred to life for the third consecutive day since their crash landing. The air buzzed with an electric undercurrent of excitement and tension, a stark contrast to the relentless drive that had dominated the previous days. Willa awoke from her fitful sleep, her skin still tingling from the vivid dreams that had plagued her throughout the night. She shook her head, trying to clear the fog of confusion that seemed to have settled over her mind since Jason's arrival. As she made her way to the makeshift command center, she couldn't help but notice the subtle changes in her crewmates' behavior. Hushed whispers and furtive glances followed her progress through the corridors. She caught snippets of conversations, words like human and compatible, repeated with increasing frequency. The atmosphere was charged with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Dr. Lyra's voice drifted from the medical bay as Willa passed. "The hormone levels are off the charts. I've never seen anything like it," she murmured to her assistant. Willa's antennae twitched, picking up on the excitement in the doctor's tone. The captain's stern face greeted Willa as she entered the command center. "Chief Engineer, I have a new assignment for you," she announced without preamble. "I want you to propose a cultural exchange program with our guest. We need to learn more about humans while maintaining diplomatic relations." Willa's heart raced at the prospect of spending more time with Jason. She nodded, trying to keep her voice steady. "Of course, Captain. I'll draft a proposal immediately." As Willa turned to leave, the captain added, "And Willa, keep your eyes open. We still don't know everything about this human. Gather any intelligence you can on their capabilities and weaknesses." The weight of the captain's words settled on Willa's shoulders as she made her way to Jason's quarters. She found him staring out of the window, his alien features backlit by the rising suns. He turned as she entered, a smile lighting up his face. "Good morning, Willa," he said, his voice sending an involuntary shiver down her spine. Willa took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Jason, I have a proposal for you. We'd like to initiate a cultural exchange program, an opportunity for us to learn about each other's customs and traditions." Jason's eyes lit up with interest. "That sounds fascinating. Where do we start?" Willa gestured to a bundle of fabric she had brought with her. "I thought we could begin with traditional Cranum garments. Our clothing is not just for protection, but also holds cultural significance." As Willa helped Jason don the intricate Cranum attire, she found herself hyper-aware of every point of contact between them. Her fingers brushed against his skin, sending jolts of electricity through her body. She could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears as she adjusted the final pieces of the outfit. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something snapped inside Willa. Without thinking, she leaned forward and pressed her lips against Jason's. The kiss was brief but intense, a surge of sensation unlike anything either of them had experienced before. They broke apart, both gasping for air. Willa stumbled backward, her antennae vibrating with shock and confusion. I'm sorry," she stammered. "I don't know what came over me." Jason touched his lips, his expression a mix of surprise and wonder. "Willa, that was—" Before he could finish, the door burst open. A group of young Cranum crew members tumbled in, their antennae twitching with curiosity. They froze at the sight of Jason in Cranum clothing and Willa's flushed face. "Is it true?" one of them blurted out. "Are humans really compatible with us?" Jason's eyebrows shot up. "Compatible? What do you mean?" The young Cranum exchanged glances before another stepped forward. "We've heard rumors about human anatomy. Is it true that you have—" She lowered her voice to a whisper. "Internal, reproductive organs?" Willa's face burned with embarrassment as Jason struggled to find an appropriate response. "Well, human biology is complex," he managed, trying to navigate the unexpected turn in the conversation. As Jason attempted to field the barrage of increasingly personal questions, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel, seek shelter immediately. A massive sandstorm is approaching the crash site." The group rushed to secure the ship, sealing off damaged sections as best they could. As the storm hit, howling winds and stinging sand battered the Starweaver. Krenim and human alike found themselves huddled together in the most protected areas of the vessel. In the cramped confines of the ship's core, Willa found herself pressed against Jason. The closeness only intensified the strange sensations coursing through her body. She noticed similar reactions among her crewmates, with many casting longing glances in Jason's direction. As the storm raged outside, Jason's eyes darted around the room, taking in the scarcely controlled chaos of emotions. His gaze settled on a section of the wall that seemed out of place. Curiosity piqued, he maneuvered closer, running his hands along the seam. With a soft click, a hidden compartment sprang open. Inside, Jason found a stack of datapads, their screens glowing with classified Krenim text. As he skimmed the contents, his eyes widened in shock. The files revealed a truth that shook him to his core. The Krenim High Command had known about the biochemical compatibility between humans and Krenim. This crash, this entire mission, had been orchestrated to study its effects. Jason's mind reeled as he tried to process this information. He glanced at Willa, who was busy coordinating repair efforts, unaware of his discovery. The trust they had built, the connection they had formed, had it all been part of some grand experiment? As the sandstorm continued to batter the ship, Jason grappled with his next move. Should he confront the captain with this information? Keep it to himself? And what would this mean for his growing feelings for Willa? The classified documents caused great concern in his hands, a secret that could alter the course of human-Krenim relations forever. As Delta 9's alien sun set once more, obscured by the swirling sands, Jason knew that the choices he made in the coming hours would shape the future of both their species. As the first rays of light pierced through the dissipating storm, Jason clutched the datapad tightly, his mind racing with the implications of what he had discovered. The sandstorm's fury gradually subsided, leaving behind an eerie calm. Jason emerged from the ship's core, his eyes adjusting to the dim light filtering through the sand-caked windows. He spotted Captain Alara near the command center, her antennae twitching as she assessed the damage reports flooding in. With a deep breath, Jason approached her. "Captain, we need to talk. In private." Ilara's eyes narrowed, but she nodded, leading him to her makeshift office. As the door sealed shut behind them, Jason placed the datapad on her desk. "I found this during the storm," he said, his voice low and controlled. "It contains classified information about the true nature of this mission." Ilara's composure faltered for a moment as she scanned the contents of the datapad. Her antennae drooped slightly, a sign of surprise or guilt. "Where did you find this?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "In a hidden compartment," Jason replied, crossing his arms. "Captain, did you know about this? That your high command orchestrated this crash to study human-Krenim compatibility?" Ilara's eyes flashed with a mix of emotions, anger, confusion, and something that looked almost like shame. She sank into her chair, her usual authoritative demeanor cracking. "I had suspicions," she admitted after a long pause, "but I didn't know the full extent of it. My orders were to establish a colony on Delta 9 and to study any potential interactions with other species we might encounter. I assumed your arrival was a fortunate coincidence." Jason leaned forward, his diplomatic training kicking in despite his own turmoil. "Captain, I understand you were following orders, but this deception puts both our species at risk. We need to be transparent about what's happening here." Ilara's antenna twitched in agitation. "You don't understand the complexities of Krenim politics, Mr. Williams. If this information gets out, it could destabilize not just this colony, but our entire interstellar alliance." Their discussion was interrupted by a knock on the door. Dr. Lyra entered, her eyes wide with excitement. "Captain, I have urgent news about my research on human-Krenim compatibility," she announced, then paused as she sensed the tension in the room. Ilara gestured for her to continue, exchanging a meaningful glance with Jason. Dr. Lyra activated a holographic display, showcasing complex biological diagrams. "The hormonal changes in our female crew members are more significant than we initially thought. These alterations are actually enhancing our adaptability to Delta 9's environment. It's as if the presence of human biochemistry is accelerating our ability to colonize this planet." Jason and Alara listened in stunned silence as Dr. Lyra elaborated on her findings. The implications were staggering. The Cranum's interaction with humans wasn't just a curious biological phenomenon, but potentially a key to their survival on this alien world. As news of Dr. Lyra's discovery spread through the colony, a palpable shift in atmosphere occurred. Crew members gathered in small groups, their conversations a mix of excitement and apprehension. Some saw the changes as a blessing, a sign that they were meant to be on Delta 9. Others expressed concern about altering the very essence of what it meant to be Cranum. Willa found herself at the center of these debates, her position as chief engineer and her closeness to Jason, making her a natural mediator. She moved from group to group, listening to concerns and offering reassurances. "We need to approach this scientifically," she urged a group of worried technicians. "These changes could be the key to our survival here." As she spoke, Willa couldn't help but notice the subtle changes in her own body. Her senses seemed sharper, her reflexes quicker, and her dreams, vivid, intense visions that always seemed to feature Jason in some capacity. The colony's focus on these internal matters was abruptly shattered by a blaring alarm from the long-range sensors. Willa rushed to the command center, finding Captain Alara and Jason already poring over the readouts. "An unknown spacecraft," Alara announced, her voice tense. "It doesn't match any known configurations, Cranum or human." Jason studied the holographic representation of the approaching vessel. Its design was sleek, almost organic, unlike anything he had encountered in his diplomatic career. "We need to establish contact," he said, turning to Alara. "This could be a first contact situation for both our species." Ilara's antennae twitched with indecision. "It could also be a threat. We're vulnerable here, with a damaged ship and a colony in turmoil." "All the more reason to open diplomatic channels," Jason argued. "Captain, let me help. This is what I'm trained for." Alara hesitated, her eyes darting between Jason and the sensor readings. Finally, she nodded. "Very well, Mr. Williams, but understand that the safety of my crew is my primary concern. Any sign of hostility, and we'll be forced to take defensive action." As preparations for potential first contact began, the effects of human-Cranime interaction intensified. Several female crew members reported vivid, shared dreams featuring Jason. Dr. Lyra theorized that these experiences might be a side effect of their changing physiology, possibly indicating the development of a low-level psychic link. The situation reached a critical point as the unknown ship entered orbit around Delta 9. Captain Alara, pressed for time and options, made the difficult decision to allow Jason to join the team that would make initial contact with the new arrivals. As the colony buzzed with activity, Willa pulled Jason aside, leading him to a quiet corner of the ship. "Jason," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need you to be careful out there. We still don't know the full extent of what's happening between our species, but—" She trailed off, her eyes meeting his. In that moment, the intensity of their feelings for each other, amplified by the stress of recent events, overwhelmed them. Jason pulled Willa close, their lips meeting in a passionate embrace. The kiss was electric, sending waves of sensation through both their bodies. Their intimate moment was interrupted by the sound of running footsteps. They broke apart, breathless, as a young Cranum technician rounded the corner. "Mr. Williams, chief engineer?" he gasped. "Captain Alara needs you immediately. The unknown ship, it's begun its descent." Jason and Willa exchanged a final, loaded glance before hurrying towards the command center. As they ran, the colony around them hummed with nervous energy. Through the viewports, they could see a shimmering shape breaking through Delta 9's atmosphere, heralding the arrival of a new chapter in their intertwined destinies. The command center bustled with activity as Jason and Willa arrived, breathless from their run and the lingering electricity of their shared moment. Captain Alara stood at the center of the room, her antenna twitching with nervous energy as she studied the holographic display of the descending spacecraft. "Mr. Williams, chief engineer, you're just in time," she said, her eyes never leaving the flickering image. "We're about to make first contact." Jason stepped forward, his diplomatic training kicking into high gear. "What's our plan, Captain?" Ilara's gaze finally met his. "We'll assemble a welcoming party. You, me, Chief Engineer Willa, and Dr. Lyra. We need to present a united front, both Krenim and human. As the unknown vessel touched down in a clearing near the colony, the assembled team made their way to the landing site. The sleek, almost organic design of the ship stood in stark contrast to the angular Krenim technology surrounding it. A hush fell over the group as a hatch on the alien craft began to open. Jason felt Willa tense beside him, her hand unconsciously brushing against his. He gave her a reassuring nod, though his own heart raced with anticipation. From the ship emerged a group of beings unlike any Jason had encountered in his extensive diplomatic career. They were tall and lithe, their skin shimmering with an iridescent quality that seemed to shift colors in the light of Delta 9's alien suns. Large, luminous eyes regarded the welcoming party with undisguised curiosity. One of the beings stepped forward, its movements fluid and graceful. "Greetings," it said, its voice melodious and without any discernible gender. "I am Zalvor of the Thari. We detected your distress signal and have come to offer assistance." Captain Alara stepped forward, her antenna quivering slightly. "I am Captain Alara of the Krenim colony ship Starweaver. We welcome your offer of aid and thank you for your prompt response." As introductions were made, Jason couldn't help but notice a subtle change in the atmosphere. The tension that had been building among the Krenim crew, particularly the females, seemed to dissipate. He glanced at Willa, who appeared more composed than she had in days. Dr. Lyra, ever observant, leaned in close to Jason. "Fascinating," she whispered. "The presence of the thari seems to be dampening the biochemical effects we've been experiencing." The women report feeling more clear-headed. Jason raised an eyebrow, intrigued by this unexpected development. He watched as Captain Alara engaged in discussion with Zalvor, noting the cautious optimism in her posture. "We would be honored to assist in repairing your vessel," Zalvor was saying, his large eyes blinking slowly. "In exchange, we ask only for the opportunity to share cultural and scientific knowledge." Captain Alara nodded, her decision clearly weighing heavily on her. "We accept your generous offer, Zalvor. However, I hope you understand that we must exercise caution. Chief Engineer Willa will oversee the repair efforts and coordinate with your team." As the thari began to integrate with the colony, Jason found himself working alongside both Krenim and the newcomers. He marveled at the advanced technology the thari employed, watching as they manipulated energy fields in ways he had never seen before. During a break in the repairs, Jason approached one of the thari engineers. "Your technology is remarkable," he said, gesturing to the tool in the alien's hand. "I've never seen anything quite like it." The thari tilted its head, regarding Jason with those large, luminous eyes. "We have spent millennia perfecting our understanding of energy manipulation. It allows us to interact with the universe in unique ways." As the alien spoke, Jason's mind raced with possibilities. Could this advanced understanding of energy fields have something to do with the dampening effect on human Krenim compatibility? He made a mental note to discuss his observations with Dr. Lyra. Meanwhile, Willa threw herself into overseeing the repair efforts, but her usual laser focus was off. She found herself distracted, grappling with conflicting emotions. The clarity brought by the thari's presence allowed her to examine her feelings for Jason more objectively, but it also filled her with doubt. As she attempted to recalibrate a power coupling, her hand slipped, causing a spark to fly. A nearby Krenim technician rushed to her aid. "Chief, are you all right?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Willa shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. "I'm fine. Just distracted. It won't happen again." But as the days passed, similar incidents began to occur throughout the colony. Equipment malfunctions and power fluctuations plagued their efforts, slowing the repair process. Whispers of suspicion began to circulate, with many eyeing the thari warily. Jason found himself caught in the middle, trying to maintain diplomatic relations while also investigating the source of the problems. He spent long hours poring over reports and coordinating with both Krenim and thari crew members, searching for answers. During one such late-night session, Dr. Lyra burst into the makeshift command center, her antennae quivering with excitement. "Captain, Mr. Williams, I've made a breakthrough in my research." Captain Ilara and Jason looked up from their work, startled by the doctor's sudden entrance. "What have you found, Doctor?" Ilara asked, her voice tinged with both curiosity and apprehension. Dr. Lyra activated a holographic display showing complex biological diagrams. The Xinthari's natural emissions aren't just dampening the human crinim biochemical effects. They're slowly altering our physiology in subtle ways. Jason leaned in, studying the diagrams with growing concern. "What kind of alterations are we talking about, Doctor?" Before Dr. Lyra could respond, alarms blared throughout the colony. Captain Ilara rushed to the communications panel, her face paling as she listened to the incoming message. "Medical emergency," she announced, her voice tight with worry. "Crew member Talia has fallen ill with an unknown ailment. Dr. Lyra, report to the medical bay immediately." As the doctor hurried out, Jason and Ilara exchanged a worried glance. The situation on Delta 9 had just become far more complicated, and the consequences of their interactions with both humans and Xinthari were only beginning to unfold. As they rushed to the medical bay, Jason's mind raced with possibilities and concerns. The arrival of the Xinthari had brought hope, but now it seemed to have unleashed a new set of challenges. Upon reaching the medical bay, they found Dr. Lyra already examining Talia, who lay on a biobed, her skin pale and clammy. The Krenim woman's chest heaved with labored breaths, her eyes unfocused and glassy. "What's her condition, Doctor?" Captain Ilara asked, her antennae twitching with worry. Dr. Lyra shook her head, frustration evident in her voice. "I'm not sure, Captain. Her vital signs are erratic, and she's displaying symptoms I've never seen before. It could be related to the changes we've been experiencing, but I can't be certain." Jason stepped forward, his diplomatic instincts kicking in. Perhaps the Xinthari could help. Their medical knowledge might shed light on Talia's condition. Captain Ilara nodded, her expression grave. "Agreed. Mr. Williams, please contact Zalvor and request their assistance." As Jason left to communicate with the Xinthari, Willa entered the medical bay, her face etched with concern. She moved to Talia's side, taking the ailing woman's hand in her own. "Hold on, Talia," Willa whispered. "Help is coming." Minutes later, Jason returned with Zalvor and 2 Xinthari medics. The alien beings glided into the room, their iridescent skin shimmering under the harsh medical bay lights. Zalvor's large eyes blinked slowly as they assessed the situation. "We may be able to assist, but our methods are quite different from yours. We would need to take her aboard our ship for treatment." Captain Ilara hesitated, her protective instincts warring with the need to save her crew member. "Is there no way to treat her here?" The Xinthari medics shook their head. "Our technology is integrated with our vessel. It would be most effective there." After a moment of tense silence, Captain Ilara nodded. "Very well, but I want one of our team to accompany her." "I'll go," Jason volunteered, surprising everyone in the room. "My diplomatic experience might be useful if any complications arise." Willa's eyes locked with Jason's, a mix of emotions swirling in their depths. "Be careful," she said softly. As the Xinthari prepared to transport Talia to their ship, Dr. Lyra pulled Jason aside. "Mr. Williams, while you're there, see if you can gather any information about their technology. It might help us understand the changes we're experiencing." Jason nodded, his expression determined. "I'll do my best, Doctor." The group made their way to the Xinthari vessel. Talia carried on a hovering stretcher. As they approached the sleek, organic-looking ship, Jason felt a strange tingling sensation wash over him. He glanced at Willa, who had insisted on accompanying them to the ship's entrance, and saw her shiver slightly. "You feel it too?" he asked quietly. She nodded, her brow furrowed. "It's like a vibration just under my skin. What do you think it means?" Before Jason could respond, Zalvor gestured for them to enter the ship. "We must begin the procedure quickly," the Xinthari said, their melodious voice tinged with urgency. Jason took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. "I'll be back soon," he told Willa, trying to inject confidence into his voice. As he stepped into the alien vessel, the tingling sensation intensified. The interior was unlike anything he had ever seen, with pulsing, bioluminescent walls and floors that seemed to shift and flow beneath his feet. The Zinthari medics guided them to a chamber that Jason assumed was their version of a medical bay. They carefully transferred Talia onto a raised platform in the center of the room. "We will now begin the healing process," Zalvor announced. "Mr. Williams, please stand here." They indicated a spot near Talia's head. As Jason moved into position, one of the medics approached him with what looked like a cluster of translucent tendrils. "These are biosensors," Zalvor explained. "They will allow us to monitor your vital signs during the procedure." Jason nodded, suppressing a shudder as the cool, gelatinous sensors attached themselves to his skin. As soon as they made contact, the room around him seemed to come alive with pulsing energy. Suddenly, alarms began to blare throughout the ship. The walls pulsed with rapid flashes of light, and Jason felt a surge of energy course through his body. "What's happening?" he gasped, struggling to remain upright as waves of dizziness washed over him. Zalvor's large eyes widened in surprise. "The ship is reacting to your human physiology in an unexpected way. It's triggering a cascade of energy pulses." Before Jason could respond, his vision blurred, and he felt himself being pulled into a swirling vortex of light and sensation. As he lost consciousness, his last thought was of Willa and the look of concern on her face as he had entered the ship. Outside, the Krenim colonists watched in alarm as the Zinthari vessel began to glow with an intense pulsating light. The energy field expanded rapidly, enveloping the ship and spreading outward to encompass the entire colony. Willa gasped as a wave of energy washed over her, bringing with it a flood of vivid images. She saw Earth, a planet she had never visited, its blue oceans and green continents spread out before her. She experienced flashes of human culture, bustling cities, ancient monuments, and the rich tapestry of Earth's history. Around her, other Krenim colonists were having similar experiences. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the intensity of the visions. Others reached out to each other, forming spontaneous connections as they shared in this unexpected psychic phenomenon. Captain Alara struggled to maintain order as the situation spiraled out of control. "Dr. Lyra," she called out, her voice barely audible over the commotion. "What's happening to our people?" The doctor, her own antennae quivering with the influx of alien sensations, shook her head in amazement. "It appears the energy field is allowing us to access Jason's memories. The human Krenim compatibility, it's more than just physical attraction. We're experiencing a form of psychic connection." As the energy field continued to expand, its effects on the colony became more pronounced. Krenim technology began to malfunction, with control panels sparking and systems shutting down. Panic started to spread among the colonists as they found themselves cut off from their usual sources of information and control. Amidst the chaos, Willa stood transfixed, her eyes unfocused as she experienced the most intense vision yet. She saw herself and Jason, years in the future, surrounded by a family that blended human and Krenim features. The image filled her with a sense of longing and purpose she had never felt before. Inside the Zinthari ship, Jason's body convulsed as the medical procedure took an unexpected turn. The interaction between his human DNA, the Zinthari technology, and the lingering effects of Krenim biochemistry created a unique biological catalyst. Energy surged through him, rewriting his genetic code at a fundamental level. Beside him, Talia's condition began to improve rapidly, her vital signs stabilizing as the catalyst's effects spread beyond Jason's body. The Zinthari medics worked feverishly to contain and direct the unexpected energy surge, their movements a blur of efficiency and purpose. As the procedure reached its climax, Jason's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. He gasped, his senses overwhelmed by a flood of new information. He could perceive the energy field surrounding him, see the intricate patterns of light and energy that made up the Zinthari ship. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the energy surge subsided. The ship's alarms fell silent, and the pulsing lights dimmed to a soft glow. Jason sat up, his head spinning with the implications of what had just occurred. Zalvor approached him, their large eyes filled with a mix of awe and curiosity. "Mr. Williams," they said, their voice resonating in a way Jason hadn't noticed before. "How do you feel?" To his surprise, Jason found he could understand the Zinthari's native language perfectly, despite never having studied it. I feel different, he replied, his own words coming out in flawless thari. What happened? As Zalvor began to explain, Jason's mind raced with the possibilities and challenges that lay ahead. The events on Delta 9 had taken an unexpected turn, and he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. As Jason's mind raced with the implications of his transformation, the Zinthari ship's door slid open. Willa burst in, her eyes wide with a mixture of relief and confusion. "Jason, are you all right? What happened?" she asked, rushing to his side. He turned to her, still processing the flood of new sensations and knowledge. "Willa, I'm not sure how to explain it. Everything's different now. I can understand the Zinthari perfectly, and I feel connected to everything around us." Willa's expression softened as she took his hand. A jolt of energy passed between them, and suddenly Jason could sense her thoughts and emotions as clearly as his own. "I feel it too," she whispered, her antennae quivering. "It's like we're part of something bigger now." Their moment of connection was interrupted by Captain Alara's voice over the comm system. "All personnel, report to the main plaza immediately. We have an urgent situation developing." As they made their way out of the Zinthari ship, Jason and Willa were struck by the transformed landscape of Delta 9. The once barren planet now teemed with life. Lush vegetation covered the ground, and strange bioluminescent plants swayed in the gentle breeze. In the distance, unfamiliar creatures darted between the newly formed trees. The colonists gathered in the main plaza, their faces a mix of awe and apprehension. Captain Alara stood on a raised platform, her antennae twitching with nervous energy. "As you can see," she began, gesturing to the changed environment, "our world has undergone a dramatic transformation overnight. The energy field generated by the interaction between our species and the Zinthari technology has altered Delta 9's ecosystem in ways we're only beginning to understand." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jason could sense the conflicting emotions: excitement, fear, curiosity, and uncertainty. Dr. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes bright with scientific fervor. "Preliminary scans show that the changes aren't just limited to our environment. Many of us are experiencing enhanced physical abilities and improved health. We need to conduct thorough examinations to fully grasp the extent of these modifications." Captain Alara nodded. "To that end, I'm organizing an expedition to explore our new surroundings. Jason, Willa, I want you to lead the team. Your unique experiences with the energy field may prove invaluable." As the crowd dispersed, Jason noticed a group of Krenum huddled together, their faces twisted with suspicion and fear. At their center stood Security Officer Koros, his eyes narrowed as he watched Jason and Willa. The expedition set out at dawn the next day. Jason and Willa led a small team into the transformed wilderness of Delta 9. As they ventured deeper into the new terrain, their enhanced senses revealed a world alive with energy. "It's incredible," Willa breathed, reaching out to touch a pulsating crystal-like growth. "I can feel the life force flowing through everything." Jason nodded, closing his eyes to better perceive the intricate web of energy connecting all life forms on the planet. "It's like we're part of a vast living network. And look there." He pointed to a group of small, six-legged creatures gathered around a pool of shimmering liquid. The animals seemed to be communicating with complex gestures and vocalizations. "They've evolved," one of the science officers remarked, scanning the creatures. "Their brain activity is off the charts. It's as if the energy field has accelerated their cognitive development." As they continued their exploration, Jason and Willa found themselves falling into a natural rhythm, moving in perfect sync without the need for verbal communication. They shared thoughts and impressions telepathically, their bond deepening with each passing moment. "This is amazing," Jason thought to Willa. "It's like we're two parts of a whole." Willa's mental response was tinged with both joy and a hint of uncertainty. "It is wonderful, but how much of ourselves are we losing in this transformation?" Their silent exchange was interrupted by an urgent call from the colony. Captain Alara's voice crackled over the comm system, strained and tense. "Expedition team, return to base immediately. We have a situation developing." As they hurried back, Jason and Willa could sense the growing discord within the colony. The emotions hit them like a wave. Fear, anger, resentment, and confusion roiled through the collective consciousness of the Crenum. They arrived to find the colony in chaos. Two distinct groups had formed in the main plaza. On one side stood those who embraced the changes, their faces alight with excitement and hope. On the other, a group led by Security Officer Koros glared at their transformed brethren with suspicion and hostility. "This has gone too far," Koros shouted, his voice carrying over the din. "We're losing our Crenum identity. These aberrations must be contained before they destroy everything we are." Captain Ilara tried to maintain order, her voice steady despite the tension. "Please, everyone, remain calm. We need to approach this rationally and—" Her words were cut off by a sudden tremor that shook the ground. The newly grown plants around the colony began to pulse and grow at an alarming rate, their tendrils creeping up the buildings and equipment. In the sky, the energy field visible as a shimmering aurora began to fluctuate wildly, its colors shifting from soothing blues and greens to angry reds and purples. Jason stumbled, overwhelmed by the surge of chaotic emotions from the colonists. He could feel the direct connection between their collective emotional state and the instability of the energy field. "We have to do something," he gasped, reaching for Willa's hand. "If we don't find a way to restore balance, the whole planet could tear itself apart." As the colony descended further into chaos, with Koros's followers moving to seize control of key facilities, Jason realized that the fate of Delta-9 and the future of human Krenim-Zin-Thari relations hung in the balance. With time running out and the transformed ecosystem spiraling out of control, he knew he had to find a way to unite the fractured groups and stabilize the energy field. The question was, how could he bring harmony to a world on the brink of civil war? War. The fate of Delta-9 hung in the balance, and Jason knew he had to act fast. "We need to bring everyone together," he said, his voice barely audible above the din of the arguing colonists. "It's the only way to stabilize the energy field and save the colony." Captain Ilara nodded, her antennae twitching with nervous energy. "Agreed. We'll organize a colony-wide gathering in the central plaza. Use your newfound abilities to reach out to everyone, Jason. We need all factions present." As they began to implement their plan, a commotion erupted near the colony's main power generator. Security Officer Koros and his separatist group had seized control of the facility, their faces set with fierce dedication. Koros's voice boomed over the emergency broadcast system. "This is our final warning. Meet our demands for isolation and expulsion of contaminants, or we'll shut down all vital systems." The effect was immediate. Lights flickered throughout the settlement, and the low hum of life support systems faltered. Panic spread like wildfire among the colonists. Jason closed his eyes, reaching out with his mind to assess the situation. He could feel the fear and anger radiating from Koros and his followers, a toxic mix that seemed to resonate with the energy field itself. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Massive vines burst from the soil, their tendrils wrapping around nearby structures and equipment. In the distance, herds of newly evolved creatures appeared on the horizon, drawn by the intense emotions permeating the air. "The ecosystem is reacting to the colony's turmoil," Willa gasped, her eyes wide with realization. "If we don't restore balance soon, it could tear the entire settlement apart." As the situation spiraled out of control, Jason took center stage at the hastily organized gathering in the central plaza. Drawing on his diplomatic experience and newfound abilities, he projected a vivid mental image into the minds of all present. In this shared vision, they saw Delta-9 transformed into a thriving world where humans, Krenim, and Zinthari worked side by side. The planet teemed with life, its unique ecosystem flourishing under the careful stewardship of the United Colony. The effect was instantaneous. A hush fell over the crowd as they absorbed the potential future laid out before them. Even the most vocal opponents of integration found themselves momentarily stunned by the beauty and harmony of the shared vision. Seizing the opportunity, Willa sprang into action. Her mind raced with calculations and schematics as she devised a plan to stabilize the energy field. "We need to create a network of energy conduits throughout the colony," she explained rapidly. It will channel and balance the field's fluctuations, but we'll need access to the main power generator to make it work. Captain Alara's face set with grit. I'll lead a team to confront Koros. We need to regain control of that generator. As Ilara and her team approached the power facility, the enhanced native fauna began to breach the colony's perimeter. Massive, six-legged creatures with iridescent scales clambered over the defensive walls, while swarms of winged insects darkened the sky. The unexpected invasion forced both Alara's group and the Separatists to set aside their differences momentarily. They found themselves fighting side by side against the encroaching wildlife, their weapons barely effective against the rapidly evolving creatures. Meanwhile, Jason and Willa made their way towards the power generator, navigating through the chaos of battling colonists and rampaging fauna. As they approached, Jason reached out with his mind, sensing the fear and confusion among Koros's followers. "We don't have to be enemies," Jason called out, his voice carrying an undercurrent of calm assurance. "We can work together to build something incredible here." Some of the Separatists lowered their weapons, swayed by Jason's words and the lingering effects of the shared vision. However, Koros remained unmoved, his eyes blazing with defiance. "You'll destroy everything we are," he snarled, lunging at Jason with a makeshift weapon. As the two men grappled, Willa slipped past them and began working on the generator controls. Her fingers flew over the interface, integrating her stabilization network into the colony's power systems. The energy field pulsed erratically overhead, its colors shifting rapidly from soothing blues to angry reds. Each fluctuation triggered a new wave of rapid plant growth or influenced the behavior of the invading creatures. Jason managed to establish a mental link with Koros as they struggled. He poured every ounce of sincerity and hope into the connection, sharing once again the vision of a united, thriving Delta-9. This time, amplified by the raw power of the energy field, the vision broke through Koros's mental barriers. The security officer's eyes widened as he truly saw, the potential consequences of his actions and the possibilities that lay before them. I didn't understand," Koros whispered, his grip on Jason loosening. With a final burst of effort, Willa activated the stabilization network. Energy coursed through the newly created conduits, spreading throughout the colony in a web of shimmering light. The effect was almost immediate. The wild fluctuations of the energy field began to smooth out, settling into a steady, harmonious flow. The aggressive plant growth slowed, and the enhanced creatures, no longer agitated by the field's instability, started to retreat from the colony. As calm descended upon Delta-9, colonists emerged from their shelters, blinking in the soft, stable light of the now balanced energy field. The shared experience of crisis and resolution had fostered a new sense of unity among the previously fractured groups. Captain Alara, her uniform torn and singed from the recent battle, addressed the assembled colonists. "We've weathered this storm together," she began, her voice carrying across the hushed crowd. "But our challenges are just getting started. We need a new approach to leadership in this transformed environment." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the diverse faces before her. "I propose we form a council to govern our colony, with representatives from all factions, including our human and thari allies. Only by working together can we navigate the changes we've experienced and build the future we all glimpsed." As murmurs of agreement spread through the crowd, Jason and Willa stood hand in hand, their enhanced senses attuned to the new harmony surrounding them. They could feel the colony taking its first tentative steps towards a new era of cooperation and understanding. Yet even as hope blossomed on Delta-9, new challenges loomed on the horizon. News of the remarkable events on the planet had spread across the galaxy like wildfire, and the first wave of curious interstellar visitors was already on its way. The fledgling multi-species community would soon face its first test in the Galactic spotlight. Spotlight on the Galactic stage. The colony's newly formed multi-species council had barely begun to establish a framework for coexistence when a massive Krenim battlecruiser materialized in orbit above Delta-9. The ship's sudden appearance sent ripples of unease through the colony. Jason and Willa, still basking in the afterglow of their shared victory, felt a sudden chill as they gazed up at the looming vessel. "That's the Temporal Sentinel," Captain Alara said, her voice tight with concern. Admiral Krell's flagship. Before anyone could react, a beam of light erupted from the ship, depositing a contingent of armed Krenim soldiers in the colony's central plaza. At their head stood Admiral Krell, his imposing figure radiating authority and barely concealed disdain. "Captain Ilara," Krell's voice boomed across the plaza, "I received your distress call. What in the name of the Krenim Empire is going on here?" Ilara stepped forward, her posture straight and dignified, despite the clear power imbalance. "Admiral, the situation has evolved since—" "Evolved?" Krell interrupted, his eyes narrowing as he took in the transformed landscape and the diverse group of colonists. His gaze settled on Jason and the nearby thari. "This is an abomination. Delta 9 is hereby under quarantine. All non-Krenim individuals are to be detained immediately for biological containment and study." The Admiral's words sent a shockwave through the assembled crowd. Jason felt a surge of panic from the colonists, their fear palpable through his enhanced senses. "Admiral, please," Ilara began, but Krell cut her off with a sharp gesture. "This is not up for debate, Captain. Soldiers, begin rounding up the aliens and isolate the human." As the Krenim troops moved to carry out their orders, the delicate balance that had been achieved began to crumble. The energy field above pulsed erratically, reacting to the mounting anxiety of the colonists. The ground trembled, and massive vines burst from the soil, snaking towards the advancing soldiers. Jason watched in awe as the planet itself seemed to rise in defense of its inhabitants. Native fauna emerged from the surrounding wilderness, forming a living barrier around the colony's perimeter. The Krenim soldiers hesitated, clearly unnerved by the display of symbiotic unity between the colonists and their environment. Seizing the moment, Jason stepped forward, his mind racing. "Admiral Krell," he called out, his voice steady despite the tension coursing through him. "I have a proposal." Krell turned, his expression a mix of curiosity and contempt. "Speak quickly, human." "Let me undergo a public examination," Jason said, meeting the Admiral's gaze. "Your scientists can study me alongside thari experts. We'll demonstrate that these changes are not a threat, but an opportunity." The Admiral's eyes narrowed, considering the offer. After a long moment, he nodded curtly. "Very well, but this changes nothing about the quarantine. We'll construct an examination chamber immediately." As Krell barked orders to his troops, Willa pulled Jason aside, her eyes wide with concern. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered. Jason squeezed her hand, projecting reassurance through their mental link. "It's our best chance to avoid conflict. Besides, I have faith in you and the others to keep me safe if things go wrong." Within hours, a transparent examination chamber had been erected in the center of the plaza. Dr. Lyra led the Krenim scientific team, while a thari specialist named Vexara represented their interests. Jason stood at the center of the chamber, acutely aware of the hundreds of eyes watching him. As the examination began, Jason felt the probing minds of both Krenim and thari scientists. He opened himself to their scrutiny, allowing them to explore the changes wrought by his symbiosis with Delta 9. Dr. Lyra's voice, filled with nearly unleashed excitement, echoed through the chamber. "Admiral, you need to see this. The human's genetic structure has been altered to incorporate beneficial aspects of both Krenim and thari DNA. His physical abilities and lifespan have been significantly enhanced." Vexara chimed in, her multifaceted eyes gleaming. "More importantly, we're detecting a complex network of bioelectric signals emanating from his nervous system. It appears to be interfacing directly with the planet's energy field." Admiral Krell leaned forward, his interest piqued despite his skepticism. "What are the practical applications of these changes?" In response, Jason closed his eyes and reached out with his mind. The assembled crowd gasped as a nearby patch of bare earth erupted with vibrant plant life, growing and blooming in a matter of seconds. He then turned his attention to a group of agitated native creatures that had wandered close to the colony's edge, calming them with a gentle mental touch. Finally, Jason approached a damaged piece of Krenim technology that had been brought into the chamber. Placing his hand on its surface, he channeled energy through his enhanced nervous system. The device hummed to life, its cracked display clearing and functionality restored. A murmur of amazement rippled through the crowd. Even some of Krell's soldiers exchanged impressed glances. A young Krenim lieutenant named Jarak stepped forward, his eyes wide with wonder. "Admiral," Jarak said, his voice ringing out clearly, "how can we ignore the potential benefits of this transformation? This could revolutionize our entire way of life." Krell's face darkened at the challenge, but before he could respond, Captain Ilara interjected with a diplomatic proposal. "Admiral, what if we designated Delta 9 as a special research outpost? We could study these changes under controlled conditions while maintaining limited contact with the wider Krenim Empire. It would address your security concerns while allowing us to explore the full potential of our discoveries." The Admiral's brow furrowed as he considered the suggestion. After a tense moment, he nodded slowly. "I will present this proposal to High Command, but I'm leaving behind a detachment of my troops to monitor the situation closely." As the tension in the air began to dissipate, Jason stepped out of the examination chamber. He found Willa waiting for him, her eyes shining with relief and something deeper. Without words, they shared their mixed emotions about the day's events, their enhanced connection allowing for a level of intimacy beyond mere physical touch. As the sun began to set on Delta 9, casting long shadows across the transformed landscape, Jason and Willa stood hand in hand, watching as Krenim soldiers began to integrate with the colonists. The arrival of Krell's battlecruiser had brought new challenges, but it had also opened up unprecedented opportunities for their fledgling multi-species community. The future remained uncertain, with the promise of Krenim scientists and diplomats on the horizon. But as Jason gazed out at the vibrant, pulsing world around him, he felt a surge of hope. Delta 9 had already weathered one storm. Together, they would face whatever came next. The delicate balance achieved on Delta 9 soon faced a new challenge as the extraordinary events on the planet spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within weeks, a massive Krenim diplomatic vessel appeared in orbit, dwarfing even Admiral Krell's battlecruiser. Jason and Willa stood hand in hand on the newly constructed observation deck, watching as a sleek shuttle descended from the imposing ship. Captain Ilara approached them, her face etched with concern. "That's the Celestial Envoy," she said, nodding toward the diplomatic vessel. "It's carrying Grand Minister Thax and his entourage." Jason felt a flicker of anxiety through his bond with Willa. "The most influential member of the Krenim High Council," he murmured. "This could change everything." As the shuttle touched down, a palpable tension settled over the assembled colonists. Grand Minister Thax emerged, his ornate robes billowing in the gentle breeze. His piercing gaze swept over the transformed landscape before settling on Jason and Willa. "Welcome to Delta 9, Grand Minister," Captain Ilara said, stepping forward to greet the delegation. "We're honored by your presence." Thax nodded curtly. "I'm here to assess the situation personally. These reports we've received are difficult to believe." Over the next few days, the Grand Minister conducted a series of rigorous inspections and interviews. Jason and Willa found themselves under intense scrutiny, subjected to hours of questioning about their bond and the nature of their transformation. "Explain to me again," Thax said, leaning forward in his seat. "How exactly does this connection between you function?" Jason closed his eyes, reaching out through his link with Willa. "It's like a constant awareness. I can sense her emotions, her thoughts, if she chooses to share them. And it extends beyond just us, to the planet itself." Thax's eyes narrowed. "Fascinating, and potentially dangerous." As the minister opened his mouth to ask another question, a blinding flash lit up the sky. Alarms blared throughout the colony as systems began to fail. "Solar flare!" Captain Ilara shouted, rushing to a nearby console. "It's knocked out our defensive shields." Jason felt a surge of panic from the colonists, their fear rippling through his enhanced senses. Without hesitation, he reached out with his mind, connecting with the planet's energy field. Massive vines erupted from the ground, weaving themselves into a protective dome over the colony. Willa joined her consciousness with Jason's, amplifying their shared power. Together, they directed swarms of flying creatures to form a living shield against the incoming radiation. Grand Minister Thax watched in awe as the transformed inhabitants of Delta 9 worked in perfect harmony with their environment to protect the colony. Even as the last of the emergency power systems failed, The symbiotic defenses held strong. As the solar storm subsided, Thax approached Jason and Willa, his expression a mix of wonder and calculation. "I believe I have seen enough," he said. "I have a proposal for you, one that could change the future of colonization across the galaxy." Jason felt a flicker of unease. "What kind of proposal?" "We established Delta 9 as a prototype for a new form of colonization," Thax explained, "one that embraces controlled evolution and interspecies cooperation. But to do this, we need to understand how to replicate your transformation. I'm asking you, Jason, to agree to a series of experiments." The weight of the decision settled heavily on Jason's shoulders. He could sense Willa's concern through their bond, her silent urging for caution. Before Jason could respond, a commotion erupted near the science facilities. A group of Krenim scientists led by a wild-eyed woman burst into the clearing. "Dr. Kelmar," Thax growled, "what is the meaning of this?" Kelmar's gaze fixed on Jason with frightening intensity. "We can't wait for bureaucratic approval," she snarled. "The potential is too great." She lunged forward, a syringe in her hand. Jason stumbled back, but not before the needle grazed his skin. The reaction was immediate and violent. The ground beneath their feet trembled as massive roots burst from the earth, wrapping around Kelmar and her team. The sky darkened as swarms of winged creatures descended, forming a protective barrier around Jason and the other colonists. Grand Minister Thax stared at the display of raw power, his face pale. "By the ancestors," he whispered, "the planet itself is alive." As the crisis subsided and Kelmar's team was secured, Jason felt a new presence brush against his mind. It was vast, ancient, and unmistakably alive. With a jolt of realization, he understood. "Willa," he gasped, gripping her hand. "Do you feel that? It's Delta 9. The planet, it's communicating with us." Willa's eyes widened as she opened herself to the sensation. "It's incredible," she breathed. "It's like the entire ecosystem is one interconnected consciousness." Grand Minister Thax watched the exchange with growing comprehension. "This changes everything," he said solemnly. "We can't treat Delta 9 as just another world to be exploited. It's a living entity, intrinsically linked to its inhabitants." In the days that followed, Thax revised his earlier proposal. Delta 9 was declared a protected world, granted special status within the Krenim Empire. A joint research team was established, with strict ethical guidelines to prevent exploitation. As the diplomatic ship prepared to depart, Thax approached Jason and Willa one last time. "We need liaisons," he said. "Individuals who understand both Delta 9 and the wider galaxy. Will you accept this responsibility?" Jason and Willa exchanged a glance, their bond humming with shared purpose. They nodded in unison. As they watched the ship disappear into the stars, Jason felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. Their journey had taken yet another unexpected turn, opening up new horizons of discovery and cooperation. But as he gazed at the vibrant world around him, feeling the pulse of life through his enhanced connection, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, not just as a couple, but as part of something far greater than themselves. The transformation of Delta 9 had opened up a new chapter in interstellar relations, one filled with both promise and peril. As the months passed, Jason and Willa's bond deepened, their unique connection a source of fascination for the newly arrived scientists and diplomats. They spent countless hours in the research facilities, their ability to communicate with the planet's consciousness, proving invaluable in maintaining the delicate balance between the colony's growth and the preservation of Delta 9's ecosystem. One afternoon, as they walked through a grove of iridescent trees that seemed to pulse in harmony with their footsteps, Willa suddenly stumbled. Jason caught her, concern flooding through their shared link. "Are you all right?" he asked, steadying her. Willa nodded, but her face was pale. "I've been feeling off for a few days. Maybe we should visit Dr. Lyra." In the medical bay, Dr. Lyra ran a series of scans, her brow furrowing as she analyzed the results. "This is unexpected," she murmured. Jason felt a spike of anxiety from Willa. "What is it?" Dr. Lyra looked up, her expression a mix of excitement and concern. "Willa, you're pregnant, but the fetus, It's unlike anything I've seen before. The human-krenim symbiosis has resulted in a unique genetic makeup. The news hit them like a shockwave. Joy, fear, and uncertainty swirled through their bond as they grappled with the implications. Is it safe? Willa asked, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. Dr. Lyra's voice was gentle but firm. We'll need to monitor the pregnancy closely. There may be risks we can't yet anticipate, but with our combined expertise and your unique abilities, I believe we can ensure the health of both you and the child. As word of the pregnancy spread, it reignited debates about the long-term implications of human-krenim relations. The colony buzzed with speculation and conflicting opinions. In the following weeks, Jason and Willa threw themselves into preparations for their high-risk pregnancy, working closely with the medical team to develop new protocols. But their focus was shattered when colonists began falling ill with a mysterious ailment. Dr. Lyra burst into their quarters one night, her face drawn with exhaustion. We've identified the cause, she said without preamble. It's a genetically engineered virus, specifically targeting our unique biology. Jason felt a chill run down his spine. Who would do this? Before Dr. Lyra could respond, alarms blared throughout the colony. Captain Ilara's voice crackled over the comm system. All personnel to battle stations. We're under attack. Jason and Willa rushed to the command center, where chaos reigned. Displays showed multiple breaches in the colony's defenses, with unknown assailants pouring in. It's the Purists, Captain Ilara growled, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. A radical, krenim supremacist group. They've been masquerading as a diplomatic mission. As explosions rocked the colony, Jason reached out with his mind, connecting to Delta 9's consciousness. He felt the planet's distress, its ecosystem recoiling from the violence. We need to coordinate our defense, he said, his voice tight with concentration. Willa, can you help me direct the wildlife? Willa nodded, her eyes closed as she joined her consciousness with his. Together, they tapped into the full power of Delta 9's evolved ecosystem. Massive vines erupted from the ground, entangling Purist ships and weapons. Swarms of bioluminescent insects clouded the attackers' vision, while larger flying creatures provided air support for the defenders. In the midst of the chaos, Jason spotted a familiar face among the Purist forces. Vox Zarin, the group's charismatic leader, was directing the assault with cold efficiency. We have to stop him, Jason shouted to Captain Ilara over the din of battle. He's the key to ending this. As they fought their way through the colony, Jason and Willa's connection to Delta 9 grew stronger. The very ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse with energy, responding to their will and the collective commitment of the colonists to protect their home. Vox Zarin's forces found themselves increasingly outmatched as the full might of Delta 9's ecosystem was brought to bear. Massive tree-like structures uprooted themselves to form living barricades, while swarms of microscopic organisms disabled Purist technology. Cornered and desperate, Vox Zarin made a final push towards the colony's power core. Jason, Willa, and a team of defenders raced to intercept him, their path lit by the eerie glow of bioluminescent flora that had sprung up in response to the conflict. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with Zarin and his remaining followers. The Purist leader's eyes blazed with fanatical hatred. You abominations will not be allowed to corrupt our species, he snarled, raising a weapon. In that moment, Jason felt a surge of power unlike anything he had experienced before. He reached out, not just with his mind, but with every fiber of his transformed being. The air crackled with energy as he established a direct neural link with Delta 9's planetary consciousness. A blinding light engulfed the corridor, and when it faded, Zarin and his followers found themselves completely immobilized by a web of shimmering, organic tendrils. It's over, Zarin, Jason said, his voice resonating with an otherworldly timbre. Delta 9 has made its choice. As the last of the Purist forces were rounded up, Jason collapsed, overwhelmed by the intensity of his connection with the planet. Willa caught him, her worry palpable through their bond. I'm all right, he assured her, his voice weak but determined. But this is just the beginning. We have a lot of work ahead of us. As the colony began the process of recovery, treating the infected and repairing the damage, Jason and Willa knew that their greatest challenges and their greatest adventures still lay ahead. The future of Delta 9, their unborn child, and the delicate balance between species hung in the balance, waiting to be shaped by their choices and actions. Their actions and choices shaped the destiny of not only Delta 9, but potentially the entire galaxy. In the weeks following the Purist attack, the colony entered a period of intense recovery. Jason and Willa, their bond stronger than ever, worked tirelessly alongside their fellow colonists to rebuild damaged structures and reinforce their defenses. The couple's unique connection to Delta 9's consciousness proved invaluable, allowing them to direct the planet's resources efficiently. As the colony slowly regained its footing, Dr. Lyra and her team redoubled their efforts to monitor Willa's pregnancy. The medical bay buzzed with activity as Krenim and thari scientists collaborated, developing new techniques to ensure the health of the unprecedented human-Krenim hybrid child growing within Willa's womb. One evening, as Jason and Willa walked through a newly restored garden, they felt a sudden pulse of energy through their shared link. Willa gasped, her hand flying to her swollen belly. "Did you feel that?" she asked, eyes wide with wonder. Jason nodded, placing his hand over hers. "It's like the baby is connecting with us and the planet simultaneously." Dr. Lyra, upon examining the data from their latest scans, confirmed their suspicions. "The fetus is displaying remarkable neural activity," she explained, her voice tinged with excitement. "It seems to be developing its own connection to Delta 9's consciousness, even before birth." As months passed, the colony flourished. The fusion of human ingenuity, Krenim technology, and thari wisdom created a thriving society that existed in perfect harmony with Delta 9's evolving ecosystem. New species of plants and animals emerged, each more fantastical than the last, as if the planet itself was celebrating the impending birth. On the night of a rare celestial alignment, when Delta 9's 3 moons formed a perfect triangle in the sky, Willa went into labor. Jason rushed her to the medical bay, their path lit by bioluminescent flowers that pulsed in sync with Willa's quickening heartbeat. As contractions intensified, Jason felt a surge of energy unlike anything he had experienced before. He instinctively reached out, linking his consciousness not only with Willa's, but with the very essence of Delta 9 itself. Through this connection, he channeled the planet's energy, easing Willa's pain and supporting the birthing process. Dr. Lyra and her team worked with practiced efficiency, their movements fluid and precise. The air in the medical bay crackled with an otherworldly energy as Willa's labor progressed. Suddenly, a blinding light filled the room, emanating from Willa herself. When it faded, the sound of 2 distinct cries pierced the air. Dr. Lyra's face split into a wide grin as she held up not 1, but 2 infants, a boy and a girl. "Twins," she announced, her voice filled with awe. As the newborns took their first breaths, the entire planet seemed to react. Outside the medical bay windows, they watched as flowers bloomed instantaneously, their petals shimmering with intricate patterns that mirrored the infant's DNA. Jason cradled his son while Willa held their daughter, both parents overwhelmed with love and wonder. Through their bond, they could feel the twins' budding consciousness, already reaching out to connect with the world around them. News of the successful birth spread rapidly, captivating the entire galactic community. Within days, dignitaries from various species began arriving on Delta 9, eager to witness this new chapter in interspecies relations firsthand. Among the arrivals was a face Jason and Willa never expected to see again, Vox Zarin. The former Purist leader approached them, cautiously, his expression a mix of remorse and wonder. I was wrong," Zarin admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "What you've created here, what those children represent, it's beautiful. I see now that our future lies not in isolation, but in unity." As the twins grew, they displayed abilities that astonished even the most seasoned scientists. By their first birthday, they were communicating telepathically, not only with their parents, but with all life forms on Delta 9. Their unique genetic makeup became a symbol of hope for peaceful coexistence among different species throughout the galaxy. 5 years after the twins' birth, Delta 9 was chosen to host the first Galactic Unity Summit. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to learn from the colony's example of harmonious coexistence. On the opening day of the summit, Jason and Willa stood before the assembled delegates, their children by their side. As they addressed the crowd, sharing their journey from those first curious encounters to creating a new paradigm of interspecies harmony, Jason couldn't help but marvel at how far they had come. "Our story began with simple curiosity," he said, his voice carrying across the rapt audience. "Two beings from different worlds, fascinated by each other's differences. Who could have imagined that those first awkward conversations about our private parts would lead to this?" A ripple of laughter and understanding moved through the crowd. Willa stepped forward, her hand intertwined with Jason's. "What we've built here on Delta 9 is more than just a colony," she continued. "It's a testament to the potential that exists when we embrace our differences and work together in harmony with the worlds we inhabit." As the summit progressed, delegates engaged in passionate discussions, sharing ideas and forging new alliances. The children of Delta 9, led by Jason and Willa's twins, played a crucial role, their innate ability to bridge communication gaps proving invaluable in fostering understanding between species. On the final day of the summit, representatives gathered to sign the Delta 9 Accords, a groundbreaking treaty that established guidelines for respectful cultural exchange and collaborative evolution among sentient species. As the document was sealed, a sense of hope and possibility filled the air. As the delegates began to depart, carrying the lessons of Delta 9 to the far reaches of the galaxy, Jason and Willa stood at the edge of the colony. They looked out over the transformed landscape, marveling at how much had changed since their first days on this once hostile world. The twin suns of Delta 9 began to set, painting the sky into brilliant hues of orange and purple. Jason pulled Willa close, their bond humming with shared emotion. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" he asked softly. Willa smiled, leaning into his embrace. "Not in my wildest dreams, but I wouldn't change a thing." Their lips met in a deep, passionate kiss, their connection stronger than ever. As they parted, they heard the laughter of their children echoing from nearby. Hand in hand, Jason and Willa walked towards the sound, ready to join their family and face whatever new adventures the future might hold. The planet hummed beneath their feet, a constant reminder of the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment, and the endless possibilities that still lay ahead.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.